Hello everyone, today I'm going to be talking about and discussing training to failure and training intensity. I'm also going to be talking a bit about when to optimize the use of training to failure and when to veer away training to failure. So training to failure, training to true failure, what is it? So essentially, when we're training in the gym, we go into a set, maybe we do a set of 10 reps, for example. A lot of people will have the idea of having 10 reps in their head and they will do the 10 reps and maybe have more reps left in the tank and maybe are not truly at that point of failure yet. So how do we know when we're at failure? Muscular failure is essentially when we're lifting a weight and we physically no longer can move it anymore. True physical muscular failure relates to when we're training in the gym and we are pushing a weight or pulling a weight or whatever you may be doing, and our muscles can no longer move that load. Our muscles can no longer provide that force against that load and can no longer move the weight from A to B. So essentially, as soon as our muscles begin to fatigue and begin to fail, mechanically fail, then the load begins to shift to either other muscle groups, which means our form might change. So when our muscles truly fail, the load can begin to be put onto the connective tissues, such as tendons, etc. So we want to optimize muscular failure. We don't want to be putting this unnecessary stress on tendons and connective tissues, because when we're training our muscles, the load's going to be put on the connective tissues anyway. So we don't want to push past that and risk an injury. When should we train to failure and why should we train to failure? Research suggests that when training in the gym, to optimize, this is true for if you're trying to grow muscle and build muscle. This is separate to if you're in rehabilitation of an injury, if you're strength purposes, if you're training for whatever you may be doing, CrossFit, etc., etc. This is truly if you're trying to gain muscular growth and trying to optimize hypertrophy. So of course, if we're training to true muscular failure, we want to be able to reduce the volume a little bit. As if we're doing 4 or 5 sets every single exercise to failure, one, we're not going to be able to optimize our performance in the other sets and other exercises that we do during that session. But also it's going to mitigate our training during the week. It's going to mitigate our recovery. It's going to limit how much our muscles can recover from that stimulus. I tend to do 2 working sets on the majority of my exercises. Now this can vary with compound exercises and isolation exercises, occasionally on a pec fly or a lateral raise or another sort of more isolated exercise like that. I would tend to do maybe 3 sets sometimes. The sets maybe be 1 rep off of failure or 2 reps off of failure. Normally 2 reps off of failure on my last set. This is 2 working sets. This does not include warm-up sets. This is 2 working sets. The first working set will be my top set, and this involves 6 to 10 reps. Again, depending on whether it's a compound exercise or an isolation exercise. This involves 6 to 10 reps to true failure. So in my head, I'm not thinking that I've got to get 8 reps, because if I complete 8 reps and it's too easy, then I'm going to carry on doing it until I've truly reached that failure. So again, it's also about the mindset of hitting a certain rep range and then not pushing past it. So with the idea of 6 to 10 reps in my head, I'm going to put a weight on the bar that I think I'm going to be able to reach 6 to 10 reps. If I get more than 6, happy. If I get over 10, then I've gone too light for my working set, for my top set, and maybe next time I'll want to look at upping the weight, because this 6 to 10 rep range is important, one for the strength gains, and one for improving that muscular strength, but also then leading on to my back off set, which leads me into set 2, where I'll reach 12 to 15 reps, again with this rep range in mind. We still want to be lifting heavy weight, because this load is what's going to cause that muscular damage and cause the muscular fatigue that we need to be able to get that hypertrophy. These 2 sets, the top set and the back off set, these 2 sets is what's going to allow us to reach this hypertrophy, to reach and optimize our muscular growth. Of course, regular training without doing this protocol, we're trying to peak that muscular growth and get the most out of the sets that we're doing, then this is the protocol I like to use, because otherwise I feel like if I'm not doing that, I'm leaving potential muscular growth, which I could be gaining just from doing this sort of protocol. These 2 sets, the top set and the back off set, these 2 sets is what's going to allow us to reach this hypertrophy, to reach and optimize our muscular growth. Of course, regular training without doing this protocol, if we're trying to peak that muscular growth and get the most out of the sets that we're doing, then this is the protocol I like to use, because otherwise I feel like if I'm not doing that, I'm leaving potential muscular growth, which I could be gaining just from doing this sort of protocol. But again, it's completely person dependent. Some people like doing two reps shy of failure, purely because they struggle to get in that mindset of taking it all the way to mechanical failure. So why should we train to failure, and what is training to failure actually going to do for us, and how is it going to benefit us? So we know that when we're training in the gym and when we're performing resistance training, load we're putting on our muscles, regardless of load, is going to cause micro tears in the muscle and break down the muscle to allow for hypertrophy to occur with sleep and with food and with the right recovery protocols. So it all stems back to progressive overload, and if we're not stressing our muscles and increase stimulus to what they've previously experienced, then we're going to limit the amount that we can grow and the amount of hypertrophy that we can achieve. Because, for example, if I've been doing 100 kg bench press for 6 reps 1 week, and then I continue to do that for 4 weeks, it's going to get easier. Our muscles are adapting, our muscles are getting stronger, our muscles are building, allowing me to push through that weight. They're getting used to the 100 kg on the bar, and is finding it easy. So what do we have to do? We have to use progressive overload to either increase the reps or increase the weight. And training to failure is going to allow you to do that, because you're going to have sessions where you're not going to be able to push the same amount of weight as you usually can for a number of different reasons. So training to failure will allow you, will put yourself in this position to increase strength. We know over time an increased load and stimulus on the muscle is going to promote more muscle damage. It's going to promote more hypertrophy, because our muscles are having to adapt, they're having to get stronger to be able to push that load. And over time, as you continue to train to failure, and over the 6 months, year, 2 years, however long you're doing this, you're going to see more and more improvements if you train to failure. As you're pushing past these barriers, these not only mental barriers, these physical barriers, you're pushing your muscles past that point where they want to give up, where they want to drop, even though you have got the physical ability in that muscle to continue pushing it. Now, I don't want this to lead you into training with bad form. I don't want this to lead you to rushing your sets, to trying to really force past failure, because that can lead to an increased risk of injury, which is what we certainly don't want. So from this video, what I want to emphasize is that training to failure is extremely important for hypertrophy and muscular growth. Not only training to failure, but intensity, with pure intent, because you'll find a big difference if you're doing this set, you're thinking about the muscle you're working on, you're pushing to that failure, then psychologically your muscle is going to connect better with your brain. And as this training to failure and intensity will allow your muscle to adapt at a faster rate, will allow your muscle to withstand this pressure, this new stimulus and new load which you're putting on it. And in turn, as you get stronger, your muscles will also get bigger. The new stimulus requires more muscle mass and more muscular strength to push that certain load or stimulus.